The mysteries of the Earth revealed, when a simple trench uncovers a portal to a lost world. Archaeology has truly given us wonders to behold, and answers to some of humanity's greatest questions. But there's a dark side to the business of digging up the past, and its shadow looms large over every decision to push a spade into the earth. Archaeology is the name given to the study of the past through the analysis of material remains like fossil relics, artifacts, and monuments, which are usually recovered through excavation. In digging up the past, as it is commonly described, archaeology has unlocked and revealed more knowledge about human events and behavior than perhaps any other discipline. Because of archaeology, we know, for instance, that there was in reality a city named Troy that was destroyed by fire during the Bronze Age, just as we know that Roman towns were lively places where people enjoyed fast food, spirituality, and also left pornographic graffiti on richly decorated walls. The excavation of the Sutton Hoo burial site in Suffolk, recently dramatized in the film The Dig, starring Ralph Fiennes and Carey Mulligan, proved beyond measure that early medieval Anglo-Saxons were both a warlike and religious people, capable of producing intricate and highly skilled works of art and ornamentation. Archaeology and its findings are also a popular area of interest with the general public. The British television program Time Team, where archaeologists examine and excavate a historical site of interest over the course of 3 days, ran on Channel 4 for 2 decades. And lately, the show has generated enough online support that it began airing new episodes in 2022, financed solely by crowdfunding. Digging for Britain, a BBC archaeological series, is now in its 10th season, first airing in 2010 and still running in 2023. While archaeology's utility and wonder is not in question, there does exist an ethical debate regarding its application. Much of archaeology consists, after all, of disturbing and shoveling up human remains and the resting places that were specifically created for those people, with the intention that they were never to be disturbed and left in peace. At what point does archaeology cross the line and become something more akin to grave robbing? And does modern archaeology need to be mindful of the effect its discoveries may have in attracting criminal elements who disturb and pilfer sites, with none of the consideration and diligence of an accredited team of investigative academics? Before we explore the evolution and ethics of modern archaeology, if you're interested in early access to videos and live chats with the creator of Intrigued Mind, consider subscribing to our Patreon. Your support will greatly help us keep the channel producing more intriguing content. Modern archaeology grew out of the European Renaissance and early modern craze for the culture of the classical Greek and Roman world. Antiquarianism, with its Latin root for old or ancient, was an early term used to describe those who sought out classical artifacts, inscriptions, and writings. Though there is evidence of what we would now refer to as archaeology occurring as far back as the 6th century BC, when the Babylonian king Nabonidus excavated the palace and temples of the Akkadian king Naram-Sin, who ruled a millennium and a half earlier, modern Western archaeology generally began in the Renaissance. A very early example was the accidental 14th century discovery of the Emperor Nero's palace Domus Aurea, or the Golden House, beneath the ground in Rome. A young man out walking one day fell through a hole on the Esquiline Hill and found himself in a huge chamber, its walls decorated with detailed and exquisite mosaics. With interest in the city's ancient past growing among the artists in its many workshops, once word of the magical cave made its way around the piazzas, the young men of the city began lowering themselves by rope with lit torches to view the artwork for themselves. Archaeology, like many academic disciplines, took centuries to evolve into its modern 21st century form. And like many practices in their embryonic stages, there was a large degree of lawlessness to its early modern antiquarian precursors. Knowledge of ancient Egypt increased exponentially when Napoleon Bonaparte brought an entire company of antiquarians, or savants, with him to Egypt for his invasion of the Ottoman Empire in 1799, resulting in the discovery of the Rosetta Stone. This stele, which was taken from the French in turn by the British after their victory at the Battle of the Nile, contained identical inscriptions in both Egyptian hieroglyphs, Demotic, and Ancient Greek, allowing modern scholars to decipher and read Egyptian writing dating back thousands of years for the first time. A decade later, the Ottoman governor of Morea in southern Greece, Veli Pasha, excavated the Palace of Mycenae and gifted a portion of its engraved columns to the Irish peer, Hal Brown, 2nd Marquis of Sligo, who promptly loaded them onto a British warship and brought them home to his family seat in Westport House, County Mayo. Brown, who would later be made governor of Jamaica and worked to end slavery there, was charged with bribing the sailors who moved the columns for him, and he gifted the columns to the British state, as well as serving a 4-month prison sentence. By this time, concerns were already being voiced at the ethics of antiquarians who moved relics from their native resting places and took them for their collections. The present-day government of Greece, for example, has campaigned for the return of the Elgin marbles, the friezes and sculptures taken from the Acropolis of Athens when Thomas Bruce, the 7th Earl of Elgin, excavated and catalogued them following the grievous damage at the site in the previous centuries. Elgin brought the pieces to England between 1803 and 1812, where they caused an immediate stir in a country whose upper classes in particular were highly enamored with the culture of ancient Greece. It might surprise many to learn that Elgin was also heavily criticized and investigated in England for the alleged theft. Notable public personalities, like Lord Byron, called it an act of vandalism. For his part, Elgin defended himself, claiming that he had permission from the local Ottoman authorities to remove relics from what they referred to as the ancient temple of the idols. Elgin won his case, but like Hal Brown, he eventually sold the marbles to the British Museum. A century later, the archaeological team, led by Howard Carter and Lord Carnarvon, made worldwide headlines when they discovered the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun in 1922. But by this time, the governments of the Near East had become far more observant of the antiquities that were being removed from their states, and Carter and Carnarvon had to work under the strict supervision and strictures of the Egyptian government. Just as the practice of archaeology had become more refined and scientific with the work of men like William Cunnington, Augustus Pitt Rivers, and William Flinders Petrie, so did the controls that governments began to place on archaeological digs through the 20th century and the first decades of the 21st. In a recent online discussion regarding the ethical issues of archaeological excavations of burial sites, Associate Professor of Anthropology Floyd Aranyasi detailed the rigors involved in gaining permission for launching an archaeological excavation in the 2020s. He wrote that obtaining a permit to dig in his state of California is a lengthy, detailed, and heavily regulated legal procedure, with the role of excavation foreman or principal investigator somewhat akin to combining the occupations of lawyer, insurance inspector, teacher, scientist, and counselor to junior members of the team and participating students. When applying for permission to dig, the principal investigator must apply to the State Historic Preservation Officer with a detailed proposal and research plan, a task usually taking months, after which the State Office of Historic Preservation will contact all Native American tribes within a 100-mile radius for objections to the dig. Sensitivity toward tribal burial grounds and other cultural sites is paramount, and objections to elements of the proposal must be amended in the research plan. Outright rejection is also possible. Once the work does begin, all participants on the dig team sign legally binding contracts on rules of behavior, and the site is still subject to numerous laws, rules of practice, and inspections throughout the dig. Fines and imprisonment are penalties for non-compliance. Sensitivity to culture plays an outsized role in modern archaeology, which is primarily aimed at furthering knowledge and recording historical sites that otherwise might be lost, and the laws differ from country to country according to the mores and standards of the state in question. Even with the best intentions and the most circumspect practices though, archaeological sites, especially those investigating high-profile historical figures or civilizations, can serve as a magnet for criminality and old-style grave robbing. In his book, Stealing History, Tomb Raiders, Smugglers, and the Looting of the Ancient World, Roger Atwood recounts his experience in southern Iraq in the wake of the 2003 occupation, when the looting of the Iraqi National Museum of Antiquities made worldwide headlines. Atwood details the events of the days and weeks following this incident, when thousands of looters descended on the archaeological sites dotted around Iraq, the home of a myriad of ancient civilizations, and looting was conducted at a rate likely unseen in history. The stolen artifacts' destination was the international markets, and it is almost certain that the scale of the loss will never properly be calculated. This phenomenon of legitimate archaeology acting as a locator for looters and genuine grave robbers is a real one, and the market for looted artifacts is growing every year, especially if the artifact has a link to a significant historical site or individual. One of the criticisms aimed at Professor Stephen Collins for his belief that the Tal el-Hammam site in the Kingdom of Jordan is the location of the biblical city of Sodom asserts that his public announcements attract criminal looters and grave robbers before the site has been properly examined and recorded. In an article for the online magazine Sapiens, a group of academics stated that sensationalized stories accentuate biblical connections with archaeological sites, generating extensive hype. This increases desire for antiquities from these locations, and the rising demand results in looting. Collins himself dismissed the claims, but in one of his own YouTube videos, he made mention of looters operating at the Tal el-Hammam site, possibly local laborers familiar with the area. It is clear that the practice of archaeology today is as far removed from its early past as the modern Super Bowl is from the first American football game played between Princeton versus Rutgers, and its practice will continue to uncover wonders to contribute to understanding the past and help better navigate the present. Unfortunately, the specter of those who would latch onto and use archaeology to profit for themselves rather than mankind is also ever present. And the solution to minimizing or even eliminating the damage caused by these bad actors is a topic that will continue to occupy intrigued minds. For more videos on the most amazing forgotten parts of our history, be sure to subscribe to the Intrigued Mind channel, like the video, and leave your suggestions in the comments below.